put a hurt on them.
You know, it's an honor for us to call Utah our rivals.
We don't lose to those guys down south.
It's been a goal of ours to beat Utah.
We're going to go down south. We're going to handle our business.
SportsBeat is powered by KSLSports.com.
We are 1 hour and 20 minutes away from a new college football season, and what better way to kick off the year than BYU versus Utah as the rivalry continues here in Provo. That's a live look at Lavelle Edwards Stadium, and this is SportsBeat Rivalry Edition, a 1 hour preview of the big game right here on KSL in prime time. Jeremiah Jensen and with you for the next hour.
Yeah, we've got exclusive one-on-one interviews coming with BYU quarterback Zach Wilson, Utes linebacker Francis Bernard, expert analysis from those who cover both sides of this rivalry, and a look back through the history of this great rivalry that you do not want to miss.
And this history is going to continue tonight. Let's get right to it, Sam. This is the 100th meeting, or the 94th meeting, depending on which school you ask, and it'll be the first time in history that they're meeting in the first game of the season.
Yeah, normally we just have 1 week to build up and talk about this rivalry, but this year, fans, coaches, players, they've had the entire offseason.
And both teams have been very candid about their feelings on how much this game means to them.
I think that it's more intense. You know, you see a lot of guys coming in here, and we'll play teams like NIU first, but we got BYU first, and it's kind of like, oh man, I want to play. I want to get out there and make sure I'm doing everything right.
I mean, you're going to go from 0 to 100 in about, one kickoff, because it gets intense.
Tons of people take it so seriously. You see guys screaming at players, and I learned that last year being on the field. I had tons of people screaming at me.
Like when I first came here my freshman year, so we went to their place, and it was ridiculous. It was something that, I probably have never seen something that crazy or that wild.
You hear, your neighbors to the right might be Utah fans, and to the left, BYU. So you're hearing, different things all week.
There's 75 of us against 60-something thousand of them.
When you step on the field, either in the BYU stadium when we're playing or in our stadium, you can hear the roar, you can feel your ground shaking, your pads, everything shaking, and it's just crazy.
On the field is real intense. Like I said, it's going to be a lot of talking. They talk every year, so you know what I'm saying? Nothing going to change from this year.
We're ready. It's been a long time coming. I don't even know how many years, but Twitter knows.
From being from Utah, for me, I don't like BYU at all. I think everybody knows that.
I'm sick of it. I think our team is sick of it. Our coaches are sick of it.
We got to beat them. I don't even care. We got to do all we can to beat them. There's no reason we shouldn't beat them.
We don't back down for nobody. We are for sure not them.
It's been a goal of ours to beat Utah for this whole offseason.
It's going to be real intense, and I guarantee we're not starting slow this year. We starting off fast. We're going to get into them, and we're going to see what they're about.
I just want them to see how much better we are.
You see all the fans, you hear all the fans, and you feel that intenseness. And once the game starts, it's just 22 guys on the field. Everything else gets blocked off.
It's exciting. I mean, this is, it's a rivalry game. It's fun.
It is fun, and you can sense that passion and that emotion. That's what keeps bringing us back each and every year, because there's something special about it. Another thing that keeps coming up with this game is the streak. You know what that streak is? 8 straight wins for Utah over BYU in this rivalry. For Utah, that's a big sense of pride, and for the Cougars, it's a nightmare they want to see end tonight.
Yeah, no doubt. And not only would a win tonight for the Utes make it 9 in a row, but they could sweep the decade. That hasn't happened in this rivalry since the 1930s.
That would be something else. Let's take a look back at the past decade of this rivalry, and it has been wild and crazy, some unbelievable games. Let's start with 2010. We remember that game, a blocked field goal, down 17-16. Later in the fourth, BYU freshman Jake Heaps led a drive down to the Utah 25. Mitch Payne attempted a 42-yard field goal for the win, but it was blocked by Utah defensive back Brandon Burton. A dramatic finish and the start of Utah's current 8-game streak.
All right, the next game didn't come down to the final second. In fact, it was decided in the first few seconds. Jake Heaps' inability to handle this snap and Derek Shelby's recovery for a touchdown was just symbolism for one of the biggest blowouts in rivalry history. Utah forced 7 turnovers. John White rushed for 174 and 3 touchdowns. in a 52-10 Ute victory in Provo.
2012, BYU was down 24-7 entering the fourth quarter, but rallied and gave themselves a chance to tie the game as time expired. That's when things got crazy. First, fans thought the game was over on a BYU incomplete pass and rushed the field, but a clock error gave the Cougars one more play. So with 1 second left, BYU attempted a 51-yard field goal that was blocked. But while the ball was still live, fans rushed the field again. A 15-yard penalty was called, and BYU got a third chance to tie the game. This time, a 36-yard field goal attempt bounced off the upright. We've seen that before in the rivalry. Utah fans could finally celebrate while BYU players were devastated. A fan even clashed with BYU head coach Bronco Mendenhall during that celebration.
Yeah, we won't be forgetting that one. That's a moment in this rivalry for sure. There was much less drama in 2013, a forgettable game that featured 4 field goals and 3 touchdowns of 2 yards or less. The game is remembered most for what happened after, fans throwing things at the refs as they exited the stadium through the tunnel.
The series 2 seasons off, but the football gods missed the rivalry so much the Utes and Cougars were somehow paired together in the Las Vegas Bowl, the first and only time they've met in a bowl game. The Utes forced 5 turnovers and led 35-0 in the first quarter. Tevin Carter, Dominique Hatfield both had a pick 6, and the Utes held off a Cougar rally to win 35-27.
In 2016, the game started with a pick 6. That was just a sign of things to come, too. Both teams combined for 9 turnovers. Despite the sloppy play, we were still blessed with another crazy finish. Taysom Hill scored a 7-yard touchdown with 18 seconds left to cut the Utes' lead to 1 point. Kalani Sitake decided to go for 2, and the win, they did not convert.
2017 was another forgettable game. Tyler Huntley had almost 400 yards of total offense. Matt Gay made 4 field goals, and the Utes defense forced 3 Tanner Mangum interceptions and held the Cougars to just 233 yards of total offense. Kyle Whittingham left Lavelle Edwards Stadium with his 7th straight win over BYU and showed the loyal Utah fans afterwards.
And in 2018 will be known simply as the comeback. BYU shut out Utah in the first half 20-0. They led 27-7 with 5 minutes left in the third. And that's when backup quarterback Jason Shelley led 4 straight scoring drives for the Utes, capped by a 33-yard touchdown run. It was the 2nd largest comeback in Utah football history.
So that brings us to tonight. The Utes are ranked 14th in the country. There's all this hype during the offseason about how good Utah is. Some are picking them for the college football playoff. On paper, the Utes are the favorite tonight.
Yeah, so what do the Cougars have to do to pull off the upset, and what do the Utes need to do in order to crush the Cougars' hopes? Well, there's one thing that I think is undebatable. The Utes have so much experience coming back in their corner. 8 players returned that received all Pac-12 honors from last season, and not just experience on this season, but experience in this game too. Bradley Anai, Leki Fotu, Pita Tonga each had a sack in last year's game against the Y. All of those guys are back again. Julian Blackman had the pick 6. He returns, and Samson Nakua's only catch last year was a touchdown. He's back too. He could be a big target again this year.
Most everybody's back, so there's not a lot of turnover, where some years when you lose 20-plus seniors, you can see a dramatic change in the attitude and the personality. Not so this year. It's very similar to what it was last year, and which is a good thing because I loved last year's group. And probably this year and then the 08 year was kind of the same. You know, we felt like we had a very good nucleus returning that year, and so probably comparable to what we had returning in 08 as far as the amount of starters and the quality of those starters.
A key matchup to watch tonight. The key matchup, in my opinion, is the BYU offensive line versus the Utah defensive line. Strength versus strength. Utah has one of, if not the best defensive lines in the country. BYU has the best O-line they've had in years. In order for BYU to compete and win this game, they have to establish a run game, and that means the BYU O-line has to be up to the challenge.
No choice. They have to be, right? And they've known about them, and they saw them last year. So we'll see what happens. We've had a great opportunity to get stronger and bigger and faster, and so we'll see if it matches up.
You got to hand it to that defensive line. They're a bunch of studs, but we played against them last year. It's not like we have to shy away and be like, dang, these guys are intimidating. Our offensive line is confident. It's not like we're going to shy away or be afraid of a few players that they have.
Health was a concern for the Utes heading into this game, but no more. Kyle Whittingham confirmed that Zach Moss and Britton Covey will be ready to go tonight. Expect Zach to carry a big load in the run game. You'll also see Devontae Henry Cole, Devin Brumfeld, and freshman Jordan Wilmer will get carries as well.
Run the football 40 times a game. He's not going to carry it 40 times, and so there's got to be some supplemental carries in there, and you will see Jordan Wilmore, you will see Devonta Henry Cole, and you will see Devin. And so we got 4 guys right now that are in the mix for carries, and but Zach will get the lion's share of those carries.
What it all boils down to really is this: can Utah live up to the expectations that have been set before them, predicted to win a Pac-12 championship, even compete for a national championship? And then there's the Cougars. They haven't won this game since 2009, and going in as if there's nothing to lose.
They can deserve this hype. I mean, they've got really good players and some good coaches, but what a unique opportunity for us.
We preach that none of that means anything unless we actually do it on the field. So we're just making sure that we come out to practice every day, working as hard as we can to make sure that we prove everybody right.
I'm glad that they're ranked in the top. What are they, 14 right now? I'm happy because it's just an opportunity for us to show who we are.
But we know as a team we have unfinished business that we have to take care of, and it starts with BYU.
Well, we know a rivalry can be divided in a household between friends and family, but in rare circumstances as well. Some of these players have played on both sides of the rivalry. Take BYU linebacker Austin Lee, for instance. His grandfather and father both played at the U. He started his career at the U before transferring to the Y after his freshman season.
And then there's Utah linebacker Francis Bernard. He scored a touchdown in the Las Vegas Bowl when he was a running back for the Cougars back in 2015, then had 80 tackles the next season as a linebacker. His one-handed interception against Utah in 2016 is one of the most memorable plays of that game. But then trouble came, a team rule violation, an arrest on suspicion of DUI, part of what ended his time in Provo and put his college football career in jeopardy. He's since turned his life around and found redemption as a Ute. I had a conversation with Francis about how he overcame his struggles, his rivalry experience, and his message for those who want to give up.
How would you describe, up to this point, your college football journey and experience?
Man, it's definitely been a roller coaster. I've had lots of highs, and then I've had lots of lows where I've had to reevaluate myself to see whether football was something that I wanted to do, and had to see if it was something I wanted to take serious. But I'm here now, and I'm excited that Utah gave me another opportunity to be back, and now I'm back up on that high.
Your struggles are well documented. As you were going through that process, you mentioned reevaluating yourself and deciding whether you really wanted to play football. What was that experience like as you tried to figure all that out while you were going through a difficult time?
Man, it was hard just because I just never in my life had I had football taken away from me, or any sport. My parents pushed my family all my siblings to play sports growing up, and so we just were known just to play sports, whether it was football, basketball, baseball, whatever it was. And so for the first time in my life, I had gotten in trouble and was messing up, and it was just kind of looking at my life like, hey, I don't, what am I doing with my life? And so when it was taken away from me, I really had to figure out, hey, all right, do I get back up on my feet, or do I just stay down to the ground and, pretty much crumble? And so it took me a little bit to get back on my feet, but, I had some people along the way, be right there every step of the way to help me realize, hey, there's always a way back, and when you get back, don't look back.
Were you worried you'd never get a chance to play college football again?
Yeah, I was. As soon as things happened to me, I kind of just hit rock bottom. And I had a job at the time too, and even that job, I stopped going to work just because it felt weird. I felt like everyone was looking at me differently. People were treating me differently, and so I just thought, man, I might as well just quit and give up just because I'm at the bottom. I might as well stay here. But I'm fortunate for those people that helped me out, get back on my feet.
So you get a second chance here. Why here, and why has it worked out?
Growing up, I always wanted to play here. I didn't get a scholarship offer from University of Utah in high school, and so coming here was always like a goal. And so when I got the opportunity from the coaching staff saying that even with things going on, they were still willing to give him a scholarship offer, I just took it and ran with them. Like, yeah, that's where I want to go, and that's what I want to be a part of.
Fast forward to now, you're a starter, you're a senior, and you're expected to be a leader. How have things changed for you, and how are you handling this new role that you have on this team?
I'm handling it great. Thanks to the guys last year, Chase and Cody, I looked at them as great examples of being great leaders. They were the hardest workers on the team. You know, I took it upon myself this offseason to be the hardest worker too. And, you know, it goes to show I got selected to be on the leadership council. And, you know, I'm just embracing it. I'm not shying away from it. Anything that comes my way, I'm embracing it and just going to run with it.
Nobody understands the rivalry quite like you do. What's it like being on both sides and experiencing both sides?
My very first experience was the 2015 Las Vegas Bowl, and just all the hype stuff going up. Like, we got here at the University of Utah, we have you know, the hate video going up of the 8-in-a-row games. They got, down south, they got something very similar going on, you know, all their wins and stuff. But it's funny now that I look back on it because there's no recent wins. So I think that's funny. I'm like, dang. Like, and so, like, when I was down south, we were always, you know, that team like, dang, we're going to break the streak. We're going to break the streak now. Being on the side, we're like, yeah, we got to keep the streak. It's been amazing to have my eyes open up to why it is that, you know, University of Utah has been dominant, you know, the past 8 times. It's because of the work we put in day in and day out. You know, I'm not saying that BYU doesn't put work in, but man, we grind over here. We grind like no other team grinds in the country, and it's the reason why we win games, and it's the biggest reason why we're going to go and do big things this year.
What's it going to be like playing LaVell Edwards Stadium again?
I'm excited, man. I love that stadium. You know, I still have love for that stadium, and it's going to be special going down and playing there one more time. And so, you know, I tell the guys who haven't been a part of the rivalry, like, man, expect it to be deafening. Like, you will not be able to, you know, talk to the guy next to you on the sideline, and it'll get that crazy, especially when the crowd is going to be 70,000 strong. Like, it's insane. So, I mean, I'm excited to go back.
There's probably a lot of people watching this right now that maybe went through similar struggles that you went through. Do you have a message for them?
Just don't give up. Even when you think, you know, life just keeps throwing things at you and you think you're going to be at the bottom and stay at the bottom, know that there's always a way out. And when you get out, stay out. You know, keep moving forward. Don't look back. And I promise you, things will always be better when you come back.
Francis gives credit to his fiancee Alexis's parents and his high school football coach, Larry Wilson at Harriman, for helping him turn his life around. He's now the father of a 10-month boy named Lennox, so quite a turnaround for him, and he'll be playing in his 4th rivalry game tonight.
Yeah, that was a great conversation, Jeremiah. Hey, what it was like for this kid growing up cheering for the U up at Rice-Eccles to being screamed at by Ute fans as the Cougars starting quarterback. My conversation with Zach Wilson is coming up, but first, this rivalry moment we won't be forgetting.
55 yards, 30 seconds on the clock. It's long enough. Good!
Right now, 4th and 18 from the BYU 12. Max in shotgun. Burnett gets the rush in. Max has to run out to the right. Colley's by himself down the field.
When you're doing what's right on and off the field, I think the Lord steps in and plays a part in that. Magic happens.
Hoping for a magical night here at LaVell Edwards Stadium. This is a scene 1 hour away from kickoff. You know, Austin Collie left his mark on this rivalry, and so have the head coaches of both of these teams. Of course, we know few understand this rivalry more than Kyle Whittingham and Kalani Sitake.
Yeah, both of them have played in this rivalry for BYU. Both of them have coached in the rivalry for Utah. And they really both know both sides of this rivalry very well.
And nobody knows it better. Kyle Whittingham was 3-1 as a player against Utah. Now as the head coach at Utah, he's 10-3 against BYU. Kyle understands the importance of the rivalry game and what it means to football fans in this state. He's also curious to see how playing it as a season opener will impact things.
Well, the rivalry game is always a big deal in the state. Enjoy it. It's competitive. It's intense. It's still, you know, it's still every bit as gratifying, I guess you could say, as always.
Kalani Sitake was 2-3 against the U as a player. He was part of several Utah wins as an assistant coach. He still wants that first win as BYU's head coach, though, and while winning the rivalry is clearly important for him, he still has his focus on the players.
Thursday night, it's going to be up on the players. You know, coaches aren't going to be there to save them, and luckily in practices we've been in that position where we let the players do their thing and be out in a position and put them in uncomfortable spots. And hopefully that the way they were able to overcome them in practice can show in the game as well.
One thing about this BYU-Utah rivalry, one of the great things is the history. There's been so many great games, wild finishes, hey! Just like that. And for players who stand out in these games, they take their place in history.
Yeah, they really do. You know, there's been so many great individual performances in the rivalry history here. It's hard for us to include all of them, but we're going to do our best by starting off with the top 5 BYU individual performances against the U, and we will begin with 1981. Jim McMahon. He never forgot losing to the Utes in 78. He made them pay in 80 and 81. In the 81 game, his last in Provo, he went nuts. 35 for 54, 565 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. He wasn't the only Cougar to stuff the stat sheet that day either. Tight end Gordon Hudson, 13 catches, 259 yards, and 2 touchdowns in a 56-28 win to clinch the WAC.
Steve Young was 2-0 versus the Utes as a starter, capped off by a brilliant performance in Provo in 1983. Almost perfect, 22 of 25, 268 yards, 6 touchdowns, no picks. A couple of Houdini-type plays he was known for. Did his damage in 3 quarters to win another WAC championship, a 55-7 win over the Utes. 55 points in 3 quarters, are you kidding me?
In 1980, it was another BYU brilliant performance. Before Clay Brown caught the game-winning pass in the 80 Holiday Bowl, he delivered an all-time performance against the Utes. 5 catches, 184 yards, 2 touchdowns, including this impressive 76-yarder, a 56-6 win for the Cougs.
Luke Staley won the 2001 Doak Walker Award, and his big night against the Utes may have put him over the top with award voters. He had 17 carries, 169 yards and a touchdown, had a run of 54 yards, also caught 3 passes for 28 yards and a touchdown. His 30-yard touchdown run down the sideline gave the Cougars a come-from-behind win in the final minute. He averaged 9 yards per carry.
And then there was Ty Detmer in 1989 after the Utes ended a 9-game losing streak to the Cougars with a 57-28 win in 88. Ty and friends were out for revenge. Detmer led BYU to touchdowns on their first eight offensive possessions. It was 63-10 after 3 quarters. Detmer 18 for 22, 358 yards, 3 scores. He also had a rushing touchdown in a 70-31 win.
Top 5 Utes moments coming up later in the show when we come back one-on-one with Zach Wilson before the biggest game of his career, and a journey back in time from the time Brigham Young said this is the right place to Jason Shelley leaping a BYU defender. A look back at the history of the rivalry that you don't want to miss. But first, another rivalry moment.
Snap to John. John backpedals, plenty of time. He's moving to his left, shuffling. All kinds of time. Now the heat comes. He's got to run to the right. John Beck is on the run. He throws behind him. It is caught for the touchdown! Caught for the touchdown! Johnny Harleen got it for the score! Harleen by himself in the end zone! The Cougars win it!
Beck's prayer answered by Johnny Harleen. One of the most iconic moments, not just in this rivalry history, but in BYU football history. And tonight in 2019, Zach Wilson is hoping to have one of those moments.
Yeah, and if he does, it'll be a highlight to his early career. That would definitely be a defining moment. You know, this is a path that he never envisioned going down when he was a kid cheering for the U.
Zach, for starters, the official close of fall camp, even though things are going to keep motoring through for the next week, how do you feel like this team has grown and maybe changed in these last few weeks?
Yeah, I think we've taken big strides as a team. I think everyone's, starting to come together. Those connections are all there, and so, I'm proud of the strides we've taken. I think the offense is going to look solid this year, and overall as a team, I think we're going to look really good.
Obviously, we know, growing up, you grew up more of a fan of Utah. What did you know about the traditions of LaVell Edwards and BYU football prior to coming?
Yeah, it was just a big game. I mean, I know it was a game, everyone got pumped about. I remember elementary, middle school, guys were always talking about who's going to win the game, and months before the game's even there, everyone's always, Utah's going to win, BYU's going to win, and so, it goes back and forth.
Was it ever intense for you guys from a fan side? Did it get, kind of to an intense level?
Yeah, I mean, it was never crazy for me, but, sitting at Utah games and when I was younger, tons of people take it so seriously. You see guys screaming at players, and I learned that last year being on the field. I had tons of people screaming at me, and I think it's just good. It's just a lot of fun, though.
How does it differ as a player then? I mean, is there a certain level of intensity, maybe a different level compared to what the fans are feeling?
Play fake for Wilson, a deep drop, Goes for the back right pylon of the end zone. He's got a touchdown to Neil Pau.
Yeah, it's a lot different. I just remember, walking out on the field, and you see all the fans, you hear all the fans, and you feel that intenseness. And once the game starts, it's just 22 guys on the field. Everything else gets blocked off, and it's kind of that white noise that starts to come through, and the feel is so much different. I mean, after the game, thinking about where I was sitting and seeing other quarterbacks from Pac-12 schools playing against Utah, and then all of a sudden putting myself in their shoes, it's weird to see how those two had matched up.
And considering that this is the first game of the year, it's never been that way in this rivalry where the two teams are beginning the season against each other. Has that changed the way you're approaching? And maybe it doesn't change the way you approach, but maybe the mindset of this whole entire fall camp, knowing that first game is possibly the biggest.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should approach every game the exact same. I mean, no matter who the opponent is. I think it's cool that we play a team like Utah first, just because it kind of gets to show who's prepared, who's done what they're supposed to be doing this whole offseason. And obviously first game of the year, it's always a mix-up, right? You never know what's going to happen. There's penalties, there's cheap shots, there's MAs all over the field, and so it's kind of one of those things like who's prepared the best.
Do you remember, watching the game growing up, do you remember the last time BYU won this game, or has it been too long?
I don't remember exactly when it was. I do remember the Harleen throwback, though, back to Harleen. I can't put a name on when it exactly was, though.
So is there any added pressure, considering it's been such a long time, for this team to end that streak?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any pressure. I think the streak falls back on all the last BYU teams, but the streak's not on our team. This team is different than last year's team and the year before, and so every single year we got a new team, and so I don't think that streak really puts any pressure on us. We're going to go out and do what we know and do what we've been practicing for these past couple weeks and months and all it is, and we're going to take it just like a normal game. We're going to prepare and we're going to be ready.
Obviously you want to win this game. How bad do you want to win it for the senior class? A team, these guys that are going out that haven't had a chance to beat Utah.
Yeah, I think it's good. A lot of our best players are seniors on this team, and we need some of those guys, and I know they're going to give it their all, and I think we owe it to them to give it our all as well.
So finally, just when you guys are here on August 29th, I mean, not only as a team, but you personally, what do you feel like you have to do if this team is going to win that game?
Yeah, just play in the offense, and one of those things is we got to execute all together. I think if I do my job, the O-line does their job, receivers do their job, it's going to take care of itself. And I think we all have that one brick that builds the wall, and so all of us kind of do our jobs together, and it would be good.
Yeah, guys, the storylines that we've been trying to build up before the game kind of are going to pale in comparison to whatever's going to happen during the game. But one of the things that we've been talking about is how big this game is for BYU. And I'm going to ask Mitch this question. I've been wondering from a lot of BYU fans who are pretending like this game doesn't matter to them. Don't believe them, because this could be the biggest game in the rivalry game history for BYU. Prove me wrong, Mitch.
Yeah, I really think, Alex, this is going to be the biggest game for BYU in the history of this rivalry, because I think that this is an opportunity for BYU to not only win against a top 25 team, but you're getting an opportunity to establish your trajectory as a program under Kalani Sitake and get that signature win to really say that BYU has arrived under Kalani Sitake. This could be the crowning jewel of the Kalani Sitake era if they can get this win.
Well, the other thing that happens is this. People could say, no, this game doesn't, look, it's 8 wins for Utah in a row, make it 9, and that's not that big of a deal. But what's a big deal is the separation that starts to happen between the two programs. That is 10, you can feel that thing. You know that there's that separation happening. Let's talk about some of the guys who are going to be impact players in this game that we haven't seen much of. I know Tyson Williams comes to mind because we haven't seen anything on this guy, and yet he's your RB1 for BYU.
Yeah, Tyson Williams comes from South Carolina, graduate transfer. The way he came to BYU was so unique. I mean, he had no connections to BYU, either his religion, a coaching staff, no connections, but he's here. And now he's RB1 for BYU, and the coaching staff believes that he can be that X factor in this game to run and have success against this talented Utah defense.
Grumpy offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes putting together a plan against this Utah defense is not an easy task. What do you think that Jeff Grimes is doing in terms of what his plan is against this tough Utah front? Because they're really, really good, maybe the best in the West.
I think he wants to have Zach Wilson be protected. I mean, he wants to rely on the offensive line. They're going to be the tip of the spear for this BYU offense. They want to make sure that Zach Wilson's protected. They're going to give Zach all the opportunities to air it out with his arm and win this game potentially.
Speaking of Zach Wilson, he's the main storyline I think that comes out of Provo. People wonder about their quarterback, and maybe not a quarterback that's been as highly anticipated than this guy right now for this program.
Yeah, Zach Wilson comes in with so much expectations. He's only a sophomore, barely turned 20 earlier this year, or this month, excuse me. And Zach Wilson, he's got the weight of the program on his shoulders, but he's embracing it. He wants this challenge, and he wants Utah desperately, and knock out the Utes.
Sweating our tushes off out here at Lavelle Edwards Stadium, and it's going to be an amazing atmosphere tonight. Everybody wondering about where the sellout kind of numbers are going to be and where those empty spots might be in the stadium. Everybody else hoping, man, I hope this thing's packed. Hopefully everybody's watching this thing from home or here inside the stadium. Let's go back to you guys.
Alex, Mitch, thank you. The countdown continues. Fans filing into the stadium here in Provo. Still to come, we break down the Utes. Scott Mitchell and Tom Hackett dig deep into the number 14 team in the country.
And several former BYU and Utah greats will sound off on this rivalry. We'll have their predictions. But coming up next, an epic look back at this storied rivalry you do not want to miss. A century worth of history bottled into just 6 minutes. From McMahon pointing to the scoreboard to 8 straight wins for the Utes, we travel back in time coming up. But first, this rivalry moment.
Back to his 5-yard line. He throws long downfield, and it is caught at the 50-yard line by Pittman. He's going to keep it. He's at the 5. The 3. Is he in there? Touchdown! Lavelle Edwards has led this BYU team to an amazing 34-27 victory.
About 40-ish minutes until kickoff now. The Utes, the Cougs, and you're watching the Sports Beat Rivalry Edition live from Provo.
We are almost there, and if you believe the University of Utah, tonight is the 100th meeting between these two schools. BYU claims it's number 94. So whoever you believe, this is the one thing we know. The history between these two teams is very rich.
Yeah, it's so much fun to look back at these highlights. We have the luxury of being able to do that, and we're trying to give it to you in this epic segment right now.
The Ute Nation was alone in the territory until 1847, when Latter-day Saint pioneers came following Brigham Young, and this is where the rivalry starts. Brigham Young founded the University of Deseret in 1850. It would later become the University of Utah. The Brigham Young Academy was founded in 1876. The church banned football in the 1900s. Once the ban was lifted 20 years later, the Utes and the Cougars met for the first time in 1922, and BYU got smashed 49-0. In 1925, Utah beat BYU with head coach Ike Armstrong, and Utah would continue to smash BYU up until 1942. In 1972, BYU snapped a 5-game losing streak and finally beat the Utes under the first-time head coach Lavelle Edwards.
It wasn't my best day or the team's, and we just want to go back up there and play better this time. Hopefully come out with a win.
It's a very emotional game for me because them being the interstate rivalry and them being so dominant.
Not too many friends are made out there.
Let them hoop and holler if they'd like, but that won't be the first time we face that either.
I like to go out there and I like to get that victory.
It was ugly, but we got the job done.
Utah is a good team.
It seems like everybody around here likes BYU, and
it has been 10 painful years when the Utes were last triumphant. Scott Mitchell, the franchise, breaks Jim McMahon's all-time yards per game in a single season.
Detmer, good protection, going for the end zones. Got Bellini, touchdown! Detmer's got his man.
He threw it right to the cone. Perfect spiral, perfect pass.
Ty Detmer of BYU.
In 1993, things were about to change. Coach Ron McBride finally built a team that could go toe-to-toe with Lavelle Edwards.
Boy, a little lob down the lane. He may go. Oh, walks in. 5 yards. 30 seconds on the clock. It's long enough. First victory in Provo since 1971, and McBride gets the shower.
There's the snap. There's the quick pass. He might go all the way.
throw. Nancy, he's going to throw for the end zone, and it is caught for a touchdown by Mike Johnson. BYU. What a grab. That was a great throw, too, by Walt. 10 yards, 15 into the middle of the field. And strong in the field. And Willie go down the sidelines. I think he's out of bounds.
For a touchdown to win this game, a field goal doesn't no good.
Here's McCoy. McCoy going to throw. Swings it over the right side. It's out there to Charlie Brown. Charlie Brown's blocking. He might score! He did! They got it to Charlie Brown and he took it in. Oh, what a finish! A great football game here in Salt Lake City, and the Utes won it by 3.
Give me a kiss.
Kanashiro's kick is on the way. It hits the goalpost. It hit the goalpost. It is no good. Oh, my goodness.
Lavelle Edwards is a University of Utah alum.
Staley is the tailback. Here is Doman rolling to the right side. He's going to keep it. He's at the 5. The 3. Is he in there? Touchdown! Lavelle Edwards has led this BYU team to an amazing 34-27 victory. And can you believe it? 6 years in a row.
They don't like us and we don't like them. It's going to be a bloodbath.
The game is over. The dream has been realized.
We're just, excited to even play against a great team like this.
Beck to throw. Coverage down there. Across the middle. Hums it. Caught to Harleen.
A PAT conversion here, and it's a 4-point lead.
Final play of the game. All the time in the world for Beck. Can anybody get open for him? He'll roll right. Lets it go.
I don't like Utah. In fact, I hate them. I hate everything about them. I hate their program. I hate their fans. I hate everything. I think the whole university and their fans and the organization is classless.
BYU 4-man rush. Throwing it over the middle. It's caught. Andrew Dorr. Touchdown BYU. Snap is back. The hold is down. It's blocked. Utah wins. Utah wins.
Attempt to try to send it to overtime, and it hit the upright, and the game does it. 35-40 in Kelvin York, the battering ram.
Many players on the football team that actually has never lost. This is Utah's world, and BYU's living in it.
Picked up by Hatfield. Down the near sideline, 25-20, 15-10, 5, touchdown Utah.
Taysom Hill in the gun, empties the backfield. Hill is going to keep it, and he won't get there.
He's left, jukes back to the right. There's the snap at his thigh. Quick fire, intercepted by Utah.
Touchdown! That's 8 in a row for the Utes. You saw Scott Mitchell and Tom Hackett in that video. Next up, our KSL Sports colleagues break down the Utes' chances against the Cougars in the latest rivalry chapter.
Thanks, guys, here at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. Scotty, 3 big questions that, everybody needs answers. 2, if you're a Utah fan. 1, do you like the fact Utah BYU's playing in week 1?
It should make you a little bit nervous just that Kalani Sitake has been excellent in his openers, whether he's been at home or on the road. He really has his team fired up. BYU is going to be fired up for this game. But I actually like this. I like that this game is the first one of the season. It causes the Utes to raise the bar early, and they got to come out. They got to be ready. Fall camp, this team has to be on all cylinders. So I actually think it's a good thing for Utah. And this really is one of those games where the fans are the ones that are going to get the best out of this, because you're going to get the best from both of these teams, and it's going to be an exciting game.
I don't like it personally, but it's a lose-lose for Utah, am I wrong?
No.
All right, secondly, expectations for this season, they're high. Look, there are some national folk out there that think Utah's in the playoff by the time this season's all said and done. What are your thoughts? Can they live up to it?
It's crazy because you have a lot of hype from people, and I don't think it's like people jumping on the bandwagon. I think people have looked at the Pac-12. it's a decisive feeling from people out here west that Utah's the best team in the Pac-12. So it's not a surprise out here. You look at how everyone has come back this year. No one left. The team feels like it's unfinished business. We've got to get back to the Pac-12 championship game and win it. Deep on defense, deep on offense, a lot of returning starters, and you have 7 home games. You have an easy South Division. It really looks like, you know, if Utah could run the table or potentially lose 1 game this year. And any team from the Pac-12 that's actually made it in the playoffs has had a 1 loss. So this isn't a far-fetched thing. Can Utah live up to those expectations? Absolutely. And the biggest reason is I believe this team feels like it has business that's unfinished, a very experienced, senior, experience-led team.
Well, that 1 loss certainly isn't happening tonight, but the final question, the most important question of them all, Scotty, can Utah take care of business tonight at LaVell Edwards Stadium?
I really think so, and I think the strength of BYU is its offensive line. The strength of Utah is its defensive line. But there's just so much depth on this offense. There's so much depth at quarterback, at running back. There's weapons with the receivers. The defense, from what we know so far, the coaches feel like this might be a better defense than a year ago. If Utah scores points, which I believe they will, they'll definitely win this game tonight.
Well, kickoff just moments away, or at least it feels like it. Back to you guys.
All right, thanks, guys. You know, we'll have more from Scott Mitchell in 1988 to John White in 2011. It's the best rivalry game performances by Ute players. That's next.
Less than 30 minutes until kickoff. A beautiful scene of LaVell Edwards Stadium as we get ready for the latest chapter in the BYU-Utah rivalry. Early we counted down the top 5 performances of all time by BYU players in the rivalry. Now it's time for the Utes.
Now let's get started with that blowout there in 1988.
That is a proud moment for Utah fans. We cheated. We're going with a 2-for-1. And for good reason. Scott Mitchell and Eddie Johnson were incredible in a 57-28 stunner over the Cougars that ended a 9-game losing streak. Sound familiar? Mitchell was 21 of 30 for 384 yards and 3 touchdowns. Johnson rushed for 117 yards and 4 touchdowns. He also had 2 catches for 91 yards, including a 62-yard touchdown.
That was a big one. The 2004 team was special, and Steve Savoy was special against BYU. He had 2 touchdown runs, 1 a 92-yarder. He also caught 5 passes for 47 yards and a score. He helped the Utes to a 52-21 win, clinching a Mountain West title and a bid to the Fiesta Bowl. They were the first BCS busters.
They did it again in 2008. We could have put the entire defense on this list for what they did to Max Hall, but we'll go with Brian Johnson. The senior quarterback was 30 of 36 for 303 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He completed passes to 8 different receivers in the 48-24 win that clinched a Mountain West title and sent the Utes to the Sugar Bowl.
John White IV, he ran all over BYU in 2011. He averaged 8 yards per carry, 174 yards and 3 touchdowns. His longest, a 62-yard touchdown run. The 54-10 beatdown in Provo, the largest margin of victory for the Utes in rivalry history since a 49-0 win in 1922.
And finally, what a game Brett Ratliff had in 2005. Getting the start for an injured Brian Johnson. Not much was expected of Ratliff, but he was sensational through the air and on the ground. 17 of 32 for 240 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also ran 19 times for 112 yards and a touchdown. His touchdown pass to Travis Latondras in overtime proved to be the game winner and the first overtime game in the rivalry, a 41-34 Utah win. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Provo. BYU versus Utah, kickoff at 8:20. Before we go, we're going to share our final thoughts. Yep. Sam, you look at this game, what's going to be the key for each team to get victory?
Well, I like what you said a little bit earlier today in the show. The win will be determined at the line of scrimmage in this game. Can BYU's offensive line match up well against Utah's defensive line? Can they create space for the running game and protect Zach Wilson?
I'll take it a step further. That run game has to be effective for BYU. I think they need a 100-yard rusher to win this game for the Utes. Just do what they do. I think they have the advantage with the roster and the talent. It's a matter of executing properly, not turning over the football. Yep. Thanks for watching KSL Rivalry Edition. Enjoy the game, everyone.